Hi everyone, I just thought I'd make a quick video after our photo walk on Sunday just to show how to merge the photos we took into panoramas. I'll be doing it in Lightroom and I'll also do it in Photoshop. If you don't have either of those or another program which can merge them into panoramas, a very good free one is AutoStitch. You will need to convert your photos first from the RAW files to JPEGs if you shot in RAW, but otherwise it's very easy to use and it's completely free. I'll provide a link down below. So first thing I'll do is I'll open up Lightroom, and these are the photos I'm going to use for the panoramas. I messed up on the day, so I actually went back and took these photos again the next day. I was so busy trying to get everything done that I didn't actually take the photos. So yeah. Anyway, this is the exact same scene, and tried to do the same composition, so at least you'll be able to see what it looks like. So for the first one, this was the one I shot zoomed in more. So this was 135 millimeters, I think. I took 7 photos going from left to right. So photo 1, photo 2, photo 3, photo 4, photo 5, photo 6, photo 7. I found going left to right easiest because then it was nice and smooth. I could see if anything needed adjusting along the way, but you could have done it right to left or in any order really. It's just personal preference. So in order to merge them, all I'm going to do is I'm going to select those first 7 photos. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key and click from the first to the last. Then I'm going to right click, and down here is Photo Merge. If I select that, they can then go to Panorama, and then select that and it will merge them into a panorama for me. It'll take a couple of seconds. Right, you can see they've all been aligned and joined. So there's a few different projections you can do. Spherical is the one I usually use. Cylindrical basically is if you want it to be a bit taller or you're shooting taller objects, it tends to work better for that. Perspective tries to get everything flat, but sometimes it goes a bit wonky, so I don't tend to use that as much. So I'll go back to spherical. Now all I need to do is click merge, and it will generate that as a file, and it will appear next to these photos. So we'll just give that a second to merge. A couple of seconds. Always seems to take longer when you're waiting for it, doesn't it, than the rest of the time? And there we are. So that's the merged panorama. So the 7 photos merged into one. And you can see a little bit of ghosting here. That's not from the panorama. That's because of the slower shutter speed I was using. That was the effect I actually wanted to show the people sort of blurring into it. So what I'll do as well is I'll do the second one, which was the wider, because I wanted to show you just quickly the difference with the bulging that you sometimes get with panoramas, particularly when you shoot at a wider angle. So these ones were shot at 28 millimeters, and I'll do the same thing. So go to Photo Merge, Panorama. I'll just wait for the preview to finish. There it is, but you can see here it's got much more of a curve in the way it's been joined, and if you zoom right in, which we will later, you'll see some of the actual joins, they're not perfectly straight, and that's simply because there's more distortion in the lens when you're shooting wide angle, and it makes it a bit more bulbous when you're joining it together. You get sort of a funny sort of bend to the image a little bit. It is there when you use a telephoto lens as well, but it's much less noticeable. And yeah, if you see the two next to each other, so I'll click merge, and we'll compare the two when this is finished, and you'll see what I mean a bit more. Just another couple of seconds, hopefully. And there we are. So if we zoom in on this one, you might see there's a little bit of a bulge in the bench there. Some of the trees as well, they're sort of curved a little bit. It's very slight. If you were shooting this at like 17mm, you'd see it much more. But you can see, I think, that there's just that sort of slightly circular thing going on, which isn't as noticeable in the previous one, and that's simply because it's zoomed in more. There's less distortion from when you're going from left to right, and it's much smoother. That's not to say that one's better than the other, it's just something to be aware of, and that's why I personally prefer shooting panoramas with a longer focal length rather than a wider focal length. So I like using anything above 50 if I can, 50mm. It tends to counteract that effect a bit. Where you'll see it particularly is with buildings. So if I show you a couple I've done before, these were at Redhead. And so you can see here, this was at, what was this at? 28mm again. You can see the curve it's put into the building, it's not perfectly straight anymore. I actually quite like the effect in this, so I left it in there rather than trying to edit it out. But that's the kind of thing I'm talking about, where sometimes it will have a panoramic kind of look. And you might see this as well if you've done panoramas with your phone and you've sort of swung around and there's a path or something like that. You'll suddenly notice that it curves where in reality it's straight. And that's simply because you're taking it with a wide angle lens, or a wider angle lens anyway than, say, a telephoto. This was the same kind of scene, but taken at, what was this, 135mm again. And you can see that it doesn't have that same kind of curvature. It does have some, but it's much less noticeable. Again, it's not better or worse. One's not better or worse. It's just I personally prefer this if I have the choice. And if you do want to do that, that's why you might shoot a. You'll often see panoramas more of mountain ranges and things where you've zoomed in a long way, and that gets rid of that kind of effect as well. It's not that you can't use it with a wide angle lens, it's just something you have to be aware of, that you'll often get a bit of curvature. Okay, so if we were to edit, if we were to merge those photos again, but this time in Photoshop, what we would do is open Photoshop, which will just take a minute. There we go. So now if we go to File, Automate, and Photo Merge, we get the same kind of a dialog box as we did before. But now we hit Browse, and so now we can go to our folder. So for me it's under the Panorama here. And I can select the raw files. So it's those 7 raw files, click OK. I'm going to hit Auto, so that means that Photoshop will do the alignment for me. We'll try to match it as best it can. I'm also going to hit the vignette removal and the geometric distortion correction. That should help with any errors in the alignment. And then I'll hit OK, and it should do the same kind of thing as Lightroom did. Just take a few seconds to load up, and yeah, it should be the same. Should be the same. While that's loading, I might just go over those steps that we did for taking the panoramas to begin with. So the first thing you really want to do is to make sure your camera and tripod are totally level. That will make stitching the images much easier. After that, you want to set your exposure for the brightest part of the image, and then you want to lock that in so that the exposure won't change while you're taking the different images. You can do that either by going into full manual mode, so nothing will change, or if you're in aperture, you can also use the auto exposure lock that will lock in exposure and it won't change between shots. Once you've focused after that, you also want to change to manual focus. That way your focus won't shift as you're taking images. Then you want to go from one side of the frame to the other, one side of the scene to the other, taking images sort of a third apart maybe. So you want to look maybe for a landmark in between each of them, which you can overlap until you get to the end of your scene. One thing I didn't say at the time, which can be quite useful, is when you finish the scene, take a photo of your hand or your foot or something like that at the end of it. That way you'll know that the scene is finished. If you did want to do a panorama by hand rather than using a tripod, you can. The process is the same. The only difference really is that you need to try to keep the camera as level as you can as you take the shots, because it'll be much harder for Photoshop or Lightroom or whatever to align the photos if the alignment is a little bit off from being handheld. One of the other things that can help if you are doing them handheld is to shoot a bit wider, so you've got more room for the overlap to match, if that makes sense. Here's the image now finished. As you can see, that's pretty much identical to the one that Lightroom did, and all we'd have to do, as we do in Lightroom as well, is just crop out the extra areas. I just messed up, so anyway, there we go, something like that. Usually when doing panoramas I like to use a 3:1 or 2:1 ratio. There's no right or wrong ratio, those just print very well. They're quite common ratios. So the last thing I'll do is I shall do AutoStitch as well. So if I launch that, this is the free program again, and so you'll get this little interface when you've downloaded it and launch it. So all you have to do is click on the folder icon and go to the folder where your images are stored. They need to be JPEGs, so you want to convert them first, but once you've done that, just select them all and hit open. It'll load the images together, match them, and there's the image again. Easy as that. Okay, thanks for watching, and hope that helped.